Welcome back to the table, friends. I'm your humble host, GreyDMs, and with me, as always, is my co-host and co-conspirator, Owen.
Hi.
You are listening to Tabletop by Night, a weekly podcast where we continue our exploration of Vampire the Masquerade. Tonight, we gather around the table to answer the question, who do you want to be?
Can I be me?
I mean, if you really want to.
No, let's not do that.
So, as we have done before, we have guests. And
that's why they're here.
With us in the studio today is two reoccurring guests, Drake.
Hello.
And Dahlia.
Hello.
So anyway, today we've come together to basically, in the effort and the spirit that this podcast was originally made in, which is basically to get people on board with playing Vampire the Masquerade, we've come together to show you a little bit about character creation, because character creation can often be a daunting task. You've already listened to us go on and on about the various clans, about the world, about the history and stuff like that. Sometimes it can, be almost an overwhelming amount of information, and then someone throws a book at you or a PDF and says, hey, make a character and show up on Tuesday, right?
That's never happened.
So to take away some of that anxiety, we thought it'd be really useful to basically have a couple people who are making characters for our own personal game kind of walk through the character process, not in the specific granular detail that you'll have to, but in just kind of general terms so that you can hear what their thoughts are and you can kind of get an idea of how this might be done.
Good idea.
So with that, if you desperately want to hear more bad attempts at talking about lore, skip ahead. We'll catch you next week. Otherwise, we're going to make some characters. So in the V5 core rulebook, they kind of guide character creation through a series of steps that have questions involved. So Dahlia and Drake have both gone through this, and they've recorded their notes. So we're going to hear from them kind of as I prompt them through the steps of creating a character. And the very first thing that usually happens with character creation is that you tend to develop a core concept, some envisioned idea of a character in your head that kind of drives this whole process. And I guess starting with Drake, what kind of started this direction for you?
So I really started with trying to figure out, who is the human before the vampire. So
it's a good place to start.
So
be read backwards.
Yeah. I basically just went through. We're going to be playing in Florida, so I'm just like, well, who are the people that are populating, the Florida scene where we're going to be, and you have your police officers, you have your office workers, you have your beachgoers, and I settled on a doctor. So I thought it would be really fun. It would be really interesting for me to play a person who is a medical professional. He's taken his Hippocratic oath, but now he's turned into a monster. And, to survive, he has to feed on people, and he has to rationalize and internalize that with himself.
You think about that, Owen? Seems like a pretty interesting angle to me.
That is a really good angle, honestly, because you have somebody that has a dichotomy of, I want to continue to exist, but I also took that oath not to do no harm, and now I have to harm to exist. So how does he get his mind wrapped around that?
Yeah, that's going to be something that he's going to be struggling with throughout our chronicle.
Sounds like a really good start. All right,
sounds like a good dagger.
It's a good knife. Yeah, it's a good knife to hand to the storyteller. Like, please insert this in my bag when opportune the time approaches. All right, Dahlia, what about you?
So I came into this knowing I wanted the character to eventually be in the Toreador clan. So for that, they tend to surround themselves with art and beauty. And so more interested in the artistic side of that. So I started brainstorming a lot of different kinds of artists and what might potentially bring them to Florida. Finally settled on a tattoo artist.
Ooh.
Technically, they're like free from tattoo artists. It's just the first one I tried to do.
So there's two more options on what the character could be?
Yeah, another one was going to be a photographer of abandoned places. The what I was kind of interested in doing was cosplayer. Because Florida has conventions like many states do, including Holiday Matsuri, which is very much a cosplay anime game convention. So.
Almost like the photographer of like abandoned places could have been like Gangrel or something.
Yeah,
You could have gotten a weird.
That one I like because that's similar to a character that you came up for that game that I was working in. Do you remember? Like, we haven't actually played it or anything like that, but you had the photographer of Forgotten Places, and I thought that was such a cool idea.
Well, that's good. It's still on the back burner. Okay, but so we're looking at a tattoo artist then.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess to throw it back to Drake then, since Dahlia kind of skipped ahead a little bit. So this character idea, since you went from character idea to clan, what is the clan that you ultimately decided to go on?
So yeah, I was trying to think about, what clan would embrace a doctor. And so I landed on the Tremere.
Not the Simisi.
No, I'm not going to see route. He is not a surgeon. He is a trauma care doctor.
So he doesn't be like, well, I can give you an extra.
See, it's funny because the whole time he's talking about a doctor, I'm like, plastic surgeon.
It's a bold path to go down. Okay, interesting.
No, I went with medical researcher.
Ooh,
with the Tremere.
The Tremere. Ooh, so we're going to get a little blood sorcery in this fledgling Tremere. Displaced from the pyramid that has crumbled, theoretically, right?
Interesting. I mean, not so theoretically. I mean, it did.
Quite literally.
Absolutely.
Maybe they wish it was theory. Like, no, it's theory. It's the pyramid's there, okay? Like, the outline of it is still there, and I'm at the top. No.
It didn't crumble. It just turned into several smaller pyramids.
It is. When they all come together, they turn into an energy
source. So that's the draft documents of what the pyramid looked like.
It's the ancient pyramid. Awesome. Cool. So we got a Toreador, and we have a Tremere. It's interesting that definitely going to be maybe a camera up heavy group, depending on how the other players show up.
Yeah, no. So I'm going to be taking notes while you guys create these characters because let
me get an anti-type here and make sure I fill in.
No, there's going to be a twist with this guy and his personality. I'm not going to really get into it. I have thoughts in my head, and I'm just kind of writing things down as you guys say stuff, just to kind of help my gears turn a little bit. But yeah, no, we're not all going to be camera.
Be very interesting. Okay, so if we go through the exercise of creating a character, we move on to let's start talking about the human life behind this. So, I mean, I think both of you have a pretty good grasp. Is there anything more that you thought of like the human life before they became a vampire? Kind of the lead up to like maybe the embrace? Like what kind of, I mean, oh, okay.
Uh-oh.
I say no. This is the shallow pool and we go no further into the depths here.
Oh no.
That's okay.
I've forgotten to do a few things.
All right. This will be interesting then. So we'll give you some time to think and we'll go to Drake.
I mean, I think it would be interesting to, bounce ideas around too.
True. Very true.
That's best characters I've ever made.
Yeah.
I never came up on with my own.
So the thing with Eli is, his family were all doctors. His father was a big name in the medical research community. And so his thing was, he went through his undergraduate, he went through medical school. He's a really good doctor. And he eventually came to a satellite ER of the local hospital. And while he was working the night shift, a Tremere came in. And then that's when the embrace happened. And then he was immediately staged. So he doesn't know how to be a vampire. So when he comes to from torpor, he's going to have no idea what's happened to him.
Which is kind of the prompt that I asked most of you to kind of toy around with. So, like, how young is Eli?
Eli is around 30 at this point. So he's been a doctor for a while, and he's good at it.
Well, He's been a doctor for like 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, in the residency.
Yeah. I mean, he's been in the medical
Yeah,
field.
he's been in the
Yeah,
medical
there we go.
field
Okay,
for a while.
But he's a freshly practicing
Yes.
because of just the time frame. Unless he's Doogie Howser.
Yeah.
You know, it's an old reference. But okay, gotcha.
The blank stares.
I know, Oh well,
Need to cut out the part where Grey realizes
where I am.
You guys have seen Harold and Kumar, right?
Yeah. Anyway,
Oh God.
Look, I haven't seen a lot of popular things, so
said. All right, cool. So with these character kind of concepts in mind, with the back, their kind of life, you know, like the human life that is eventually going to be a vampire. So we don't have to go into specifically how you like what each value of your attributes are, but like one of the questions it asks you is like, what is the best attribute and what is the worst? And I'm kind of wondering what you set those at.
So yeah, for Eli, his best attribute is his intelligence. He is a doctor and medical researcher who spent a lot of time in school. So, you know, his thing is, you know, research. So his highest stat is int. His worst stat is his strength.
He's a mage.
I mean, yeah, I've been there.
You know, as doctors, you know, lifting heavy objects, you know, if
That's what nurses are for.
nurse scalpel. Oh, it's so heavy. Oh, can we get lighter scalpels, please?
you know, if a doctor needs to rip something heavy out of a patient, something has gone terribly wrong.
That's what blood buffing's for, anyways.
Just hold on a second. Very interesting. Okay, Dahlia.
So for her strongest characteristic, I had dexterity because she's a tattoo artist. She needs those fine motor skills to be able to get those very detailed pieces of art in there and not leave someone with a really weird smiley face or something. And she also has strength as her weakest stat because it just wasn't as important as all the others.
Suck, I can't. I'm at the whims of the person I am tattooing. I cannot hold down the arm at all.
Noted.
I sense a theme. We are going to need some heavy hitters.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, it's like,
Owen is going to be a bodybuilder?
yeah, well, things like stamina that I was kind of toying with being below one, but I'm like, you have to sit there for long hour sessions doing tattoos,
Mhm.
and so you kind of need some stamina there. So I'm like, it doesn't take a whole lot of strength to work a needle gun, I think.
I hope. Okay, cool. That sounds pretty good. So now I think when you get to the skill section, you guys probably noticed that they divide in 5th edition. They basically break up your skill acquisition and according to like 3 sections. So the first section was basically skills that you gain during your professional life. The second one is like skills that are tied to a life event. And the third one was basically leisure skills well, that look, I'm guessing we're only going to get partial information here. So let's start with Drake here. Like, let's talk about your professional skills. Like, which one? Just not go in the book.
I followed the summary page. Apparently,
No, not that. That's why I wanted you to go through the process because it says professional. Wow.
I just think it's funny because like we're reaching this point where it's like I didn't do that yet. She still has like 12 pages of notes.
Yeah, this is gonna be
all the
interesting.
justifications for all of the skills that I picked.
Oh wow.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well it's okay.
That's fine.
So
This will
can
be really good.
This will be very interesting then. All right. So let's go through the classic method with Drake, and then we can go through the documentary method with So like professional skills. I can take a guess, but like what'd you get?
So for his professional skills, he is, you know, obviously he's got medical as, you know, his top stat. And, you know, obviously being a doctor. And the next one is going to be his academics and his awareness. You know, being a trauma care doctor, you have to, you know, go through medical school, go through all of the academic stuff. And then his awareness is, you know, being able to respond quickly to the changing conditions of patients in volatile.
Yeah, I mean, in the
situations.
ER, situational awareness would be huge. So like that totally makes sense. When you move on to your life event skills, what kind of life event did you put down?
So for his life event skills, there's two of them. So first one I gave him was investigation, because being a doctor, you are always under the threat of being investigated for malpractice. That's happened. So he's learned some investigation skills going through, being investigated for, medical fraud, all that stuff.
So in his long history of 2 years of being a doctor, he's been investigated a few times.
This is like during his region.
Yeah, it's something that
Residency.
doctors need to be able to know.
Right.
And then the other one is his leadership skills, which is something that he learned, from, being trained on how to, lead other doctors.
What an upstanding Tremere.
Yes.
It's gonna be interesting. Okay.
I know someone who'd like to meet you.
Yeah. So then your leisure skills. What was like his fun? What do you do for the fun or his hobbies?
So his leader skills, he's a gamer.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't resist making him a gamer. So he has technology skills from being a gamer. He's a car enthusiast, so he's good at driving, and he listens to this great podcast about vampires. And so he has a dot into occults.
Oh, that's kind of cool. That is fun to play with, because like legitimately, that is a wonderful way to frame getting occult knowledge, because you're not actually saying it's good knowledge.
Right.
Like you're leaving it to the
and you'll
storyteller.
have one dot. So
yeah, so you're just like, I've heard this. I've heard some crazy stuff on this. I want to roll. And then like a bad roll is just as fun as a good roll.
I'm pretty sure Joe Rogan talked about this.
It's like, you got to grab the vampire by the bum. Awesome. Okay, so why don't, Dahlia, you just pick out some highlights from your skill set here? I see a lot of writing.
So, as a Toreador, I got very distracted by the very well laid out summary page of the process. And so under the skills section, it had something stating like 3 different ways that you could grab skills. And I chose Jack of all trades because it seemed like a tattoo artist would have a lot of world experience. That probably has some variety. There's a variety of people who will show up in a tattoo parlor. So I guess as her strongest skill that she had was craft, because as a tattoo artist, that would be her prime skill that she would have. I mean, there's a few of these. So some secondary important ones that I thought she should probably have would be insight, so that she could read the clients and what they want and understand what's going on in the room as well. And also medicine, because I've been watching a little bit of Tattoo Fixer or something like that. So they're very much understand how to take care of a tattoo and give a lot of medical instructions at the end of the process. So I figured she would understand at least how to keep people from getting their tattoos infected.
Not quite so important anymore.
Well, I mean, yeah. In most, pretty much all of my skills, the way, I developed this was just from the perspective of her as the human.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great.
One of the other interesting ones, because basically through this process, there were you were supposed to pick one that was your top skill. You got 3 dots in, then you had 8 that were 2 dots, and then 10 that were 1 dot. And one of her 1 dot was the cult, because a lot of people come in with interesting requests and having an understanding of the cult in case somebody wants to get a tattoo that's kind of out there.
Celtic knot.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the amount of people that probably come in with Celtic knot or something else, Celtic or Chinese writing, and they're just I know what this means.
Cup of soup.
So specifically, the way Dahlia decided to do it was the alternative quick skill assignment. So that it gives you 3 options that you can basically do if you just want to do a quick array of skills instead of following the question prompt thing, where it ties it to these events. So just for you, to understand basically the different ways you can make your character. If you've been making characters for really long and you don't, feel you have a really good grasp on the character and you don't need to kind of go through these questions, you could do that. So, yeah. So between the two of you two, did you take specialties?
Yes.
Okay. Then yes, Drake, please tell us about your specialty.
So, for my specialty, I gave him, medical trauma care.
I gotcha.
Because that is his primary skill. And then I got a free specialization by taking the academics, and he has a research specialization.
Oh, nice.
So what does that do for you?
It gives me a bonus for if I'm, performing an action that is, either in treating some traumatic wound, I can get a bonus, success or a bonus dice. I can't remember which one it is. And then, if I'm doing, a research task, I can also get that bonus.
So really specific situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Specific subset of a particular skill.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I guess.
Yeah.
You'll-
Quick build portion, it said to take specialties and a bunch of different things, and there was no or, it was all in.
Oh.
So
We'll have to go take a look at that.
Yeah.
All right.
I haven't looked at that, so I'm interested to see what it says.
Well, so one of the things V5 does is basically certain skills. If you take a dodnet, usually you take a specialty because they're like intellectual skills where it's like you wouldn't just be an academic. You would be an academic with a
specific. Yeah.
Yeah. So for example, she had a dot in performance. It said that you could take a specialty in performance, so it would be conversation because she's going to be sitting there for hours staring at somebody, and you need to be able to keep up a conversation.
So a lot of those are like the free specialties, and that's there's a blurb about doing that, which was cool, which is good. And you can, so anyway, we'll move on. So the next session basically goes into setting the beliefs of your character. So there's basically 3 things we're going to touch on. The first one being, what did you guys put down for convictions? What did Drake put down for convictions? Let's start there.
So Drake's convictions are largely based around his views as somebody who was groomed from a very young age to be a doctor. So his strongest conviction is, I shall always, to the best of my ability, provide the best care and treatment to anyone in need, regardless of who they are.
That's going to be very interesting when we put the vampire template on. Interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
Does Dolly have any convictions?
Yes, it was just the last thing that was on the list to do.
All right. Fair enough.
I mean, I kind of just it was at the end of the process. So I just took some of the examples that they had because it said to take 3. So one of them was always aid women in need. And her reason, or her touchstone, are we going to talk about that?
That's the next part. So if you want to jump into that, you can go for it.
So her touchstone in particular for that was Natalia, one of her coworkers who escaped from an abusive relationship with Teresa's help.
Gotcha. Interesting. Does Drake have any touchstones recorded yet?
Yeah. Drake's touchstone for his first conviction is his father. His father, who was a well-respected and well-established doctor.
Excellent.
There's another knife. Very good.
Very good.
There's going to be a lot of knives that are handed to the storyteller, okay? I've left it very open.
Drake, I'm very proud of you. This is how we
You
do
can
it.
tear his life apart with the touchstones I'm giving you.
I mean, that's kind of what they're there for.
Yeah, I mean, there's mechanical terms for them, but yes, this is going to make it so much more enjoyable for you to be pulled upon the strings as the story goes along. Another one you want to mention, Dahlia? Or?
Sure. So one of the other convictions she has is never do drugs or drink, and this touchstone was Breaker Bob. One of her repeat clients who suffered from addiction and has gotten clean. And she had, I think one of the first things she did, or one of the things that she did for him, was a symbolic tattoo of him getting clean.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Drake, you got one more loaded. Do you want to get onto?
Yeah, you're gonna love this.
Oh.
So his second conviction is I shall always, to the best of my ability, protect those in need from harm or hardship. And his touchstone for this is his kid's sister, who is suffering from an incurable disease.
Oh, perfect. This is so good.
But we know how to take care of that.
Everything I've ever wanted.
It's also his ambition to cure said incurable disease.
Okay, there we go. So then... Very interesting. So then, yeah, I guess that segues into the next thing. So do we have starting ambitions for you guys? No. Okay. So we do have an ambition on the table. That's great. That's fine. It's wonderful.
I have an obsession.
Okay. Sure. What's that?
It actually, apparently, there are 3 obsessions, more or less. It's not perfect yet. But basically, creating the perfect tattoo for the client.
Okay.
Also, the tattoos that live with the person.
Interesting.
So that one's probably going to be the one that's more going to be pursued when after she's in break.
Buddy with a Simisi. Okay, so now that we go basically past the humanity phase and we start going into the questions about the embrace.
What? His obsessions or anything like that?
Are you already said your ambition?
I hinted at it. I can go into detail if you want.
Well, you said you wanted to cure the...
All right.
Do you want to talk about it more?
I mean, I can give it a quick thing. It's Eli. My character is Eli. Eli's kid sister was born with juvenile osteoporosis. It's an incurable disease, and she is so frail that she can't go outside anymore. And so his father's line of research, which is now going to be his line of research, is finding a cure for her.
He will become Morbius.
It's morbid time.
Morbid time.
I know where she can get some medicine. Won't fix her, but it'll make her better.
Okay, so now we go to moving past the humanity section and going into the vampire section. So now we're talking about thinking your character after the embrace as a character of the night. So a couple questions are going to come up. The first one is basically, how do you hunt? Because this is a choice of like how the character works, and it gives you a few. I think it gives you a skill and possibly a discipline.
Yeah, give you some stuff.
So Drake, what did you choose?
So my predator style is the Sandman. So Eli works night shift in an emergency room. There's overnight patients. He can relatively easily sneak into a room of a patient unconscious and sneak a pint or two. But
be careful about that heart monitor.
Yeah.
His thing is that he's trying to take as little as possible because he doesn't want to harm the patients.
How's his
He's on the edge.
How's his resolve and composure stats?
We'll see.
Oh boy. That's going to be fun.
We got a bleeder.
All right. Dahlia, do we have anything on this? Yeah, okay, good.
It's everything's out of order.
Like a true inspired Toreador.
Beauty in the chaos.
I blame the editors for this because they clearly set up the more detailed version of it one way and then the summary a different way. Anyway,
I would just blame
to be fair, I also took note of how the summary sheet was out of order from the paragraphs.
Okay. Yeah, I was just jumping into the character creation too fast and didn't read the right pages. So, predator type that I chose was Scene Queen because it makes the most sense for this tattoo artist because there was something else in these notes that implied that she had a slight bit of fame. And so, since she's already part of a subculture, she could easily have her work recognized and be in that scene.
Maybe she was like a guest on that Kat Von D tattoo show.
Well, even just being like an underground known artist.
Yeah, it's more like,
and just like, do you want to see some of my other work here? Like, you want a consultation? Why don't you come into my basement? I mean, that could be fun. Okay,
don't have a basement apartment.
So you both have your predator types. So let's just go deep into the vampire side. So Drake, what kind of disciplines did you give Eli?
So Eli, being freshly embraced and then immediately staked, he doesn't know much about how to be a vampire. So I didn't as much as I intend to delve into blood sorcery later, he doesn't have any off the bat because nobody has taught him how to use blood sorcery.
Interesting.
So I went the route of so there are these abilities that his vampiric blood gives him that he can stumble into. So I've given him some points into aspects. So he has heightened senses. I've given him premonition, and he has scry the soul.
Ooh, okay.
So he's seeing things that he didn't see before.
I've seen things, man. Things and stuff. You wouldn't believe it.
I mean, any doctor who works in like late night ER,
absolutely.
Florida has probably seen.
I mean,
stuff.
all the motorcycle accidents.
It's all the people that come with like parts of ski-doos in parts of their bodies that are surprising. Like, all right, they're very interesting.
I was in Daytona for Bike Week.
Yeah, and then the other one I've given him is 1 point into dominate for cloud memory.
Good point.
Because if somebody catches him doing something suspicious, his immediate reaction is just going to be like, "You didn't see that."
I wasn't here. Forget the past 15 minutes.
It was that bitch Mindy.
Please look directly into the light. Flash.
Very nice, very nice. So, Dahlia, what kind of disciplines did you give your artist?
So I gave her celerity because having quick reflexes seemed kind of appropriate for somebody doing a lot of detail work and stuff like that.
She could tattoo an entire person in half an hour.
That'd be nice.
I'd go to that tattoo artist.
Might not like it.
Well, the paint will be done soon.
Yeah, but it's all at once.
So it was Click when he goes into his boss's office and he like pauses and starts slapping the heck out of him.
Yeah,
it's like, what happened? I don't know.
That's such a headache.
So she also has presence, and that's one I think that I gave her 2 points in because she wants people to feel certain ways about her tattoos and stuff. And I think along with the predator type came dominate as well.
That could make sense. I think it was probably picked between 1 and 2 things.
I think it was between us. Folks, maybe.
That sounds about right.
So I went with.
Ooh, a Toreador starting out with a dot in dominate. I think of somebody who's pretty jealous about that. Maybe someday she'll find wings.
And she'll throw a pen at somebody.
Lethal pen. All right, cool. So, so 2 more points, and then we kind of wrap this stuff up. So the first one is, did any of your beliefs change, your conviction change? I know you probably didn't think it this way, but if you follow the guide, one of the questions is like, did this change as you became a vampire? But like for our lovely tattoo artist, we probably all did it at the same time. What about our doctors? Anything been changed yet in his early 10 seconds of being a vampire before being staked?
Probably hasn't been there yet.
As I say, one of the things that he's probably going to have to struggle with very quickly is figuring out that he has to feed, contemplating that along with his do no harm.
It is going to be delicious to do. Okay, and then last of all, were there any advantages that you took, the merits, those kind of things on War Sheet? Did you go into any of that stuff?
Yeah.
We all took baby teeth.
We're not thin bloods.
Excuse me, we've risen a rank this time.
The Eli is a trust fund baby.
Nice.
So he has a few points into resources, and I've given him a nice haven, a nice house. Daddy's little gift from becoming a full doctor.
Oh, it's going to be so interesting to see certain players not be the richest person in the.
Oh, I'm perfectly fine with that.
I know, no, it's going to be fun, and some players will still be the poor person.
Yeah. So for advantages, she's got a good size haven. It's not huge, but it's a decent size. She also has herd, which gives her 4 to 7 vessel that she can feed from. Middle class living. And also bloodhounds, so she can smell the resonance of human blood without having to taste it.
Ooh, that's
very
interesting.
I figured it might be different for you.
It will be kind of interesting, especially if the doctor starts needing to
And especially this is taking place in Florida, and Florida man might show up, and you just don't know what he's on.
So he has every resonance at once. I don't understand how this is happening.
Just that tone shift is like he's looking at me. I think he's doing good, and all of a sudden the tattoo artist is like, "We should run. We should all run." Like, no.
Everybody thought Florida man wasn't real. He's real.
All right. Well, I mean, that kind of brings us to the end of character creation. Is there anything else that you want to say about your choices, or?
Well, I know, like, I picked 2 flaws. One of them was, even though it's a good size haven, it also is a little bit haunted. So
Yes.
Yeah,
seems like it would be another interesting reason why she would have picked up a little bit of occult stuff too.
it's kind of cool. So when you're choosing out merits, there's some things where you take flaws so that it reduces the cost of the merit and basically allows you to like get other stuff.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. Doctors, anything parting pieces that you want to go over?
Staying on flaws, being the good doctor that he is, I have given him some flaws in prey exclusion. So he
I feel that.
He refuses to feed on children and the sickly.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. It's going to be really tough because he's not going to be able to feed in the ER.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's because it's
how
people.
do you define sickly?
Yeah, it's people who are suffering from an illness, a pathogen.
Oh, okay.
Because he's concerned that it's just like, oh, I'm consuming this infected person's blood. Like, I don't want to get, the flu or
What about gonorrhea? Syphilis.
Yeah, all of those things. It's just in the knocking back of his brain. It's like, I shouldn't bite that.
So he's fine with the trauma. Oh no, the person is missing more of it.
The person's getting a blood infusion anyway. It'll just take a few.
I like to think that he's the doctor that comes in with like the results after you just had your STD screening, and he's like, "Well, there's good news and bad news for you. You have to take a nap. So I need to feed on you."
You're just imagining him hooking someone up to a blood bag while he's sucking on their neck, just squeezing the blood bag. He's like, get in there.
One for me, one for you.
The thing is that his Sandman Predator style gave me another specialization and given him anesthesia. It's just like, hey, good news. You don't have any terrible bloodborne illnesses. Also, I'm going to need you to breathe 10 times very slowly.
Too, that means you might get a little kickback when he's drinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh man, if I dope him up with the right stuff, that's a little better. Makes my night a little sharper. Wow. Well, what do you think, Owen? What do you think about these 2 new?
I think they're great. Honestly, I think they're very interesting characters. I think it'll be fun to play opposite them and see how it goes.
Yeah, I think
I've gotten some good ideas on
what to add to the mix.
What to add? Let me flip that over. No, I honestly, I just wrote down things that I saw that you guys weren't doing that I could fill a role in. So things that you guys weren't good at, something I could make my guy good at, that kind of stuff.
We need a tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be that, but I'm going to do something.
Also, Jason.
Jason,
he's scrappy.
Yeah.
He's definitely scrappy.
Not necessarily.
He's not super good at any one thing. He's just a scrappy little kid. And he'll be.
I mean, how much later is this? Is he still technically a kid? He's got some experience under his belt. I mean, I know he has an age.
Yeah, but that's the point. Is he's still like a 19-year-old or whatever.
Yeah,
so he's going to be a scrappy kid for the rest of his life, and he's going to be in that mindset of being a scrappy little kid. That's the kind of thing about Vampire. But but yes, I've been going with him and basically allowing him to have the extra experience and basically making sure that like everything is brought up and he's at a significant advantage compared to you guys.
Oh, absolutely.
But that's because at our table that doesn't really matter as much because unless there's a very good roleplay reason, there's no reason why you'd ever scrap. And the way we're structuring this chronicle, he's basically the mentor to you guys, so it all works out. No, I think you guys did great. I think the things that I usually ask for as a character are is it someone that you could kind of, is it close enough to yourself? Is it that kind of, softball pitch away from you that you're going to be able to play the character? And I think it is for both of you. I think it's cool. I think you've already given kind of a few knives. That's great.
Yeah, that's the best.
You know, I like to collect the knives and I like to decide when to use them, and it's wonderful. So yeah, I think this is a really good, interesting group, and I'm interested to see when we have the third component here.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be very, very interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so now we're going to transition into something that we did before, and we haven't been the best at keeping it up. So Owen has basically created an NPC character for our campaign, and we're going to try to listen to the character, get an idea, tell him our thoughts on it, and he's going to try to not tell us, A, the position they occupy in the world, and B, the clan, so that we can kind of take that as a fun part to guess along. The whole part of this, podcast is basically getting you used to the idea of vampire and all the wonderful lore that goes with it. So let's try to use what we've learned to determine if we can kind of figure out what Owen is planning. So feel free to take it away.
All right. So this one I did a little differently than the last time. This time I actually wrote a story, and I'm basically going to read the story to you, and yeah, we'll just go from there. So, born in 1722 on the island of Antigua in the British West Indies, Eliza came from a wealthy family. Her father was a British Army officer managing a plantation. She had privileged upbringing, but life wasn't exactly easy. By the time she was 16, her family moved to South Carolina, and things started to change. When they got to South Carolina, Eliza's father was called back to Antigua to serve as lieutenant governor, leaving her in charge of 3 family plantations. It's not something you'd normally see a teenage girl running not 1, but 3 plantations. That's a little strange. But Eliza wasn't like most people. She had an unnatural talent for managing land, people, and money. While most young women her age were getting married and raising children, she was experimenting with crops, trying to find a way to make her plantations profitable. And she did. Her big breakthrough was indigo. Everyone else had given up on it, said it was too difficult to grow in South Carolina soil, but not Eliza. She figured it out. She developed a process that worked, and soon enough, her plantations were producing indigo in large quantities. Before long, South Carolina was one of the top indigo exporters in the world, all thanks to her. In 1744, Eliza married Charles Pinckney, a wealthy planter and political figure in South Carolina. They had 3 children together. Charles was well-connected and ambitious, but he wasn't around for long. He died in 1758, leaving Eliza to manage their estates and raise their children alone. She took full control of the plantations and continued to build their wealth, maintaining her place in South Carolina society. But then something happened. The American Revolution. Her plantations were smack in the middle of South Carolina, right where the British and the American rebels were fighting for control. At first, she tried to keep her head down, stay neutral, but she had friends and allies on both sides after all. She wasn't eager to lose everything she'd built. But neutrality doesn't last for long in war. The British knew her plantations valuable, and they pressured her to support them. Subtly at first, and then more directly. The American rebels saw any cooperation of the British as treason, so they were on her case too. Eliza found herself caught in the middle, trying to balance her loyalties while protecting her lands. It wasn't easy. Her plantations became targets for raids from both sides. Soldiers would show up demanding food, supplies, anything they could take. She had to negotiate, constantly using every bit of influence and charm she had just to keep her lands from being seized or burned to the ground. By 1780, things were getting out of hand. The British captured Charleston, and the fighting spread into the countryside right to her doorstep. It was then that someone else took interest in Eliza, a man named Etienne de Roquefort. He wasn't like the others. He wasn't there for indigo or land. He had a different kind of offer, one that wasn't so straightforward. Etienne saw something in Eliza, something more than just her intelligence or ability to run plantation. He saw someone who could adapt, someone who could survive in the chaos and come out stronger. He approached her at a low point when her options were running thin. He offered her a way out of the mess, a chance to protect everything she built, maybe even gain more. If there was a catch, of course. There always is. She didn't know exactly what he wanted at first, but she was desperate enough to listen. The war wasn't going to end well for her, not with both sides treating her like an enemy. So she took the offer, even though she knew there was more to it than Etienne was letting on, and that's when things really changed for her. After that night, Eliza wasn't the same. She disappeared from the public life for a while, kept a low profile. When she did reappear, she was different, more composed, more in control, and somehow more influential than ever. She moved carefully, quietly, and seemed to know just the right things to say, the right moves to make. The war ended, and she still had her lands, her wealth, and her reputation intact. That was no small feat, considering how many others lost everything in the chaos. Sometime later, Eliza had to disappear from public life. She couldn't be the lady of the plantation anymore, not in the same way. She staged her own death, letting the world believe that she had succumbed to illness. Her children were grown by then, and they managed the estate in her absence. In years following the embrace, Eliza didn't stay in one place. She moved through the colonies, then further afield. She spent time in Charleston, then New Orleans, which was a hotbed of kindred activity. New Orleans, with its mix of cultures and secrets, gave her a chance to learn the intricacies of kindred politics. She became known there for her ability to keep peace among the local factions, gaining respect among the kindred for her tact and diplomacy. But by the late 19th century, as New Orleans was becoming more dangerous and politically unstable, she decided it was time to move again. She looked south towards Florida, where things were a bit less structured, a little more open to new influences. Eliza moved to Florida in the early 1900s, long before it became the developed state we know today. She was drawn to the potential of the place, a frontier where new opportunities and new challenges lay. At first, she kept a low profile, operating quietly in the shadows as always. She stayed in a series of private residences and smaller estates, blending in, learning the lay of the land and watching the growth of the cities around her. By the 1920s, Fort Lauderdale was growing, and the Bonnet House was built, a beautiful estate with lush gardens, a lagoon, and an architectural style that appealed to her sensibilities. She saw it and knew immediately it was the place she needed. She arranged to acquire it discreetly, through intermediaries, keeping her own name out of the records, as was her way. Eliza had the house prepared carefully, every room, every pathway set up to her liking. It wasn't just about luxury, it was about control, about having a place she could manage kindred affairs with grace, authority. She began to invite select guests, kindred only, turning into a social hub and a neutral ground.
Yeah, okay, so that part, like it narrowed three things down to one for me, and I was like, okay, gotcha on that one, but the good question. So what are you guys thinking?
My immediate thought was, this person is somebody who managed her plantations. She was a leader, so I was smelling Venture.
Yeah, me too.
It's interesting because I was bouncing back and forth between Venture and Toreador, trying to figure out why they would select, and like the Venture is the clear pull because of like the leadership portion, like hands down, that makes good sense. So I also hate you for what you put in there. Some of the nods that you put in there that will never be explained in this podcast, overt and not so overt. But yeah, I would say the safest bet to me is it's a Venture, Keeper of Elysium.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like the straightforward. Like I would think that's it. I'm trying to think if there's any spin on it that you could take, and it feels like there's something tickling in the back of my head, but I can't really. Indigo, that was kind of interesting.
So this is a real person.
Oh, really?
Yep. Mm-hmm. She existed. Everything up to the point where, she turned actually happened. That was all real. Everything after that point was, egregiously changed. But yes, Eliza Lucas Pickney, she was known as the Indigo Lady. She was the person that basically brought indigo to the Americas and figured out how to grow it here.
Oh.
That's pretty cool. Like you said before, like that's the kind of the fun thing about playing Vampire the Masquerade as opposed to Requiem is playing with these real histories and stuff and kind of expanding the reach of the scope. So you want to put us out of our misery?
So yes, Keeper of Elysium, correct. But she is a Toreador.
Yeah, okay. So because I was thinking, I was like, there's enough subtlety, like when she said that. When you said that, like, the estate was called something to her and she went and decorated each room. And I was just like, oh, that's really good. That's very Toreador-like. But it was just like the going back and forth between that and the sire and stuff like that. But
and that is a real place, too.
That's cool. Mm. This is going to... See, I like it because I'm losing some control here, but I'm also going to gain some stuff. So this is pretty cool. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Very cool.
So, well...
Yeah, I think I still not always clear on what's a Toreador and what's a Venture as far as
so Toreador or the beauty, the aesthetic.
I understand that.
Or just
like
differentiating each other.
Yeah, when they're in a political structure, it's really difficult sometimes for me to differentiate that. We're a little easier because you're the ones that apply magic in the back. So
yeah,
I'd also be an Assamite.
could be a few things,
Yeah,
actually.
I think you could always play anti-type, but I
Mhm.
think the thing you're looking at for the difference between a Toreador and an adventure, which I think is a little blurry here, is that the Toreador is going to run into situations where they will sacrifice their political objectives for their obsession. An adventurer just would not do that.
Mhm.
Because their obsession is their political.
Exactly.
venture.
And so that's the little slight difference. And like there's enough of this that was just like the things that she was pursuing and that led to the political stuff.
Mhm.
That was very Toreador. That's kind of why I was thinking that the thing that caught me up was like more of the sire choosing her, and that was like kind of felt like a very adventure thing.
Mhm.
But like, you know, like I said, there's a whole bunch of untold stuff in that story, so you just don't know.
You
And
just
like,
want her fields of indigo.
and 100%,
Well, that
the
was kind of-
character that embraced her was a Toreador. Like, is
Yeah, and that's
so I was just
I
like,
know.
yeah, I know. So I was
thought
just
that was
like,
funny.
yeah.
That was my whole thing. Is like indigo, the color. You know, it was just like
Mhm.
they've created not something new, but they've created a new outlet for it, a new way to get it, and that was
Yeah.
my.
Definitely worth the. No, it was good. That is very good. It's weird because I think both of us. I think if you listen to the other characters and you listen to these characters, we're both going to changing in ways. And it's very interesting. But that's a fascinating character that I will take from you. I will swipe it and I will go run with it.
You can have it.
Well, I better have it because I have to figure out what they're doing. So yeah.
Oh, dang. Sorry.
Oh yeah, good point. 2 days.
Sorry.
So yeah, so I think that kind of brings us to the end of our character creation talk.
Mhm.
Is there anything that anybody wants to talk about or bring up as a last? I don't know why I just hit my mic.
Yeah, I am very much looking forward to this campaign.
Yeah, I am too. I think it'll be really fun.
Yep. I'm going to go home and look at the book and see what I should have done the first time.
Some tweaks and
I'm going to spend the next 2 days at work, not doing my job, and
just
looking at this stuff instead.
just thinking, what could it be? That's the brilliance, right? Like let inspiration guide you to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Everything puts you back to playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with that, I think we'll wrap up and we'll see you guys at the table again sometime.
Goodbye.
Bye.